Hello there and welcome back to Bloodborne. Today Lady Lillian is trying out some new fashion, but this ain't quite right. That's a bit better, but it's still missing a certain je ne sais quoi. There we go. Now it's perfect. So yeah, last episode we completed a number of NPC quest lines, and one of the rewards that we picked up was the Wheel Hunter badge. Mata Logarius led a band of executioners. Their workshop was a secretive enclave of mystical beliefs and heady fanaticism, which served as the backbone of the executioner's unique brand of justice. This allows for the purchase of the Logarius' Wheel, used to slaughter the Virebloods in Canehurst, and bathed in pools of their blood, forever steeped in their ire. As well as the Golden Ardeo completing the executioner's set. The conical gold helmet, symbol of the executioners, represents luminosity, ambition, and an unflagging resolve to face impurity, staring it down with stern golden spirit. In the past few episodes, we've picked up a number of new runes, so let's get some of them equipped, replacing our HP boosting clockwise metamorphosis rune with the stamina boosting anti-metamorphosis rune, as well as upgrading our moon rune to the one that we get from the Nightmare of Mensis. But most importantly, we're going to equip the Radiance Oath rune, making us an executioner and boosting the HP recovery ability of our blood vials. The executioners despise the impure Virebloods, and no matter what the circumstances would never cooperate with the bloodthirsty hunters who serve the Undead Queen, Annalise. Now with that out of the way, let's use our blood echoes to purchase some levels before we end up losing them to an enemy of some sort.
Welcome home, good hunter. What is it you desire? Very well. Let the echoes become your strength. Let me stand close. Now shut your eyes.
At this point, increasing vitality would be the most useful as far as combat effectiveness goes, especially to counteract the fact that we removed the HP boosting rune, but we're going to be needing a few more points of arcane in the future to use some gear. So that's where I put points.
Farewell, good hunter. May you find your worth in the waking world.
Even the doll respects the wheel. So today we're going to be continuing with our foray into the Hunter's Nightmare, starting by warping to where we felled Ludwig. So, Ludwig, how are you doing here? He doesn't seem to be doing too well, so let's put him out of his misery. As it is, we need to do this. You have to kill Ludwig in order to get Simon to spawn near his head.
A tragic figure, but he will shame himself no longer. He died with his ideals untarnished. He was a true hero, and earned that much at least. Do you know why the hunters are drawn to this nightmare? Because it sprouted from their very misdeeds. Things that some would rather keep secret. A pitiful tale of petty arrogance, really. High time someone exposed the whole charade. Now, go on ahead. You seek nightmares and the secrets within, do you not?
Well, secrets do beckon so sweetly. And really, what's the worst could happen? Investigating the secrets of the healing church. I'm sure things will be fine.
Shrouded mine eye, but with steady stride. Coloured by blood, but always clear of mind. Proud hunter of the church.
Beasts are accursed, and curses are shackled. Only ye, the true blades of the church.
We can't actually open this door and talk to that man, although I get the feeling he's probably not the best conversationalist. At any rate, we have these two to deal with. A church hunter and a gun-toting wheelchair man in the back. I would advise rushing forward and fighting them both at once. It's much better to draw out the church hunter, which is easy to do since he walks fast, and take him out first. If this area was a bit larger and you had more room to dodge, taking them both out wouldn't be too big of an issue. But as it is, being mostly a narrow pathway, the gun-toting wheelchair hunter is kind of a pain in the ass to deal with. Overall, this is a situation where you actually want to be a bit more defensive than offensive, since being too reckless will get you killed quickly due to the enemy's high damage output. And this is in fact a lesson you should take to heart in the following area, as it is one that will be useful. At any rate, there are a number of locked doors in this hallway, and we'll need to come back for them later. But for now, let's head down this rather ominous stairway. There appears to be a man in this room.
Hunter. Well, that's very odd. Do you hear the toll of the bell?
I'm afraid I don't.
Very well. The beast you seek will not be found here. Go back to your hunt, and if you have the chance, put this night behind you. Places better left untouched. Secrets better left alone. Only a forward so brazenly roam.
Well then, that's certainly rather suspicious. And if we take a better view of him with the monocular, we can actually see that he is constantly ringing a bell that produces no chime. Well, continuing on, exploring this hallway here. Of the rooms that we can enter, most of them have absolutely nothing, which is kind of a bit odd, honestly, as far as exploration goes, but this one here has a truly unique item. The Fist of Gratia, or Gratia? I'm not entirely sure how you're supposed to pronounce it. It is an offhand bludgeoning weapon. The hulking hunter woman Simple Gratia, ever hopeless when handling hunter firearms, preferred to knock the lights out of beasts with this hunk of iron, which incidentally caused heavy stagger. Gratia was a fearsome hunter, and to onlookers her unrelenting pummeling appeared oddly heroic. No wonder this weapon later assumed her name. So despite the description being pretty awesome, the weapon itself really isn't. The damage is low, its moveset is incredibly limited, only having 3 very slightly different hits for the regular attack, rolling, and backstep. And to use it you need to spend upgrade materials on it that you'd much rather spend on your weapons. It's useful for stunning large enemies, but so are heavy weapons, and we currently have 2 of those equipped, so it's not really something we're going to be using. Up ahead, there appears to be either an NPC or an enemy hunter, so rather than charging forward, let's head back a bit and make sure to take out any threats over here, such as these especially gross rats with giant glowing eyes. The interesting thing is that, if I'm not mistaken, I believe this type of rat only ever shows up here and then nowhere else. So it's kind of interesting that they have a distinct model like this. Yeah, they're really not hard to take out, even with +6 Logarius's wheel. I didn't upgrade it all the way to +9 because I didn't want to waste the limited chunks we have on it. And as a result, I won't actually be using the wheel all that much in this video. It's just nowhere near effective as a +9 Holy Moonlight Sword. Although, even if it were +9, it still wouldn't be nearly as good. It just has kind of a hard to use and slow moveset. At any rate, this here is an enemy that you want to approach carefully because she's not alone. She has another hunter helping her, and together they're a pretty dangerous duo. The black-garbed church hunter rushes forward aggressively with her Ludwig's holy blade, and pistol, while the white-garbed hunter supports her from behind with that magic spell that we may or may not be getting sometime in the future. The strategy that you want to employ here is actually the same one that you would employ against other players in a similar situation, using a divide and conquer strategy, which is especially effective here as the black-garbed one will follow you all the way to the cells below here, while the white-garbed one will generally stop in the stairway. And then once you've got her by a lonesome, just drink a lead elixir and she can't do jack shit to you, since all of her attacks will just bounce off and not do that much damage thanks to the lead elixir's defense boosting effect. And she's pretty easily taken out. Unfortunately, the lead elixir lasts shortly enough that it wears off right after we beat her, which is good because we really don't want to confront the white-garbed hunter while under the effect of the lead elixir. It doesn't do jack shit to mitigate the arcane damage of her spell, and would make it much more difficult to evade her attacks. With her, you want to essentially use the opposite strategy as you use against the black-garbed hunter, going into an open area like this so you can more easily dodge her magic. If she'll actually come up. It can be a bit hard to actually get the hunters to get off the stairway there once you've gotten them there. The AI is a bit funky about it. But once you do, it's pretty much just avoiding her magic attacks and then getting close and wailing on her. She does have a threaded cane, which she is quite deadly with, but she much prefers to use her spell, especially if you've been at a distance, even remotely, in the past. Here I'm trying to drag her into this more open area here so I don't get caught up on the beds. That could easily lead to death if the camera ends up going screwy and leaving me unable to see when she's attacking and all. But yeah, as you can see, if she's by her lonesome, she's really not that much of a threat. And is pretty easily taken out. I feel like this hunter duo here is something of a litmus test for the next area. If you can get by them, you should be pretty good. If you're having trouble, you're probably going to have trouble with the next area. Insert eye pendant. If you remember, we actually picked up an eye pendant last time we explored the nightmare. There are 2 cathedrals in the hunter's dream. One lies past the River of Blood, and another contains the private research hall of the Healing Church. Only chosen members of the Healing Church or their lamentable patients can enter the research hall using this eye. Here we are, arrived at the secret research hall of the Healing Church. In quite an ominous place it appears to be. First of all though, we get a wandering nightmare we need to kill post-haste. For its delicious, delicious blood chunks.
Has anyone, seen my eyes? I am afraid I've dropped them in a puddle. Everything's pale now.
Jeez, I know how bad losing your contacts can be. Can you imagine how bad losing your eyes is? Unfortunately, we cannot help the poor man, as we cannot actually find the eyes within the puddle here. So don't go wandering around looking for them, you'll just get poisoned. Anyway, as the eye pendant mentioned, you must be either one of the researchers or one of their patients in order to get into the research hall. That must be one of their patients. We'll probably be seeing more as we explore the area. And we'll be finding plenty of locked doors, or doors that only open from the other side. This is a very shortcut-heavy area. At this point, our only way to progress is to head up the gigantic-ass spiraling staircase. And whereas the first patient we encountered was a friendly sort, the vast majority in here aren't, and they're the main enemy type. And they are quite a dangerous enemy type as well, especially if you happen to be using a slower weapon, such as the Logarius's wheel here. And that is because they do absolutely ridiculous damage with pretty much all of their attacks, and attack incredibly fast as well. That one spasming attack they have can take you pretty much to 0 HP from full, if you don't have ridiculously high vitality. Even worse, a lot of their attacks just straight up ignore hyper armor, as you'll be seeing a bit later, so you can't even just act as a tank and burst through their attacks with your own. So you pretty much need a weapon that is at least reasonably quick if you want to avoid getting hurt. And that's pretty much why I don't really use the Logarius's wheel much in this video here. Again, even if it were +9, the damage just would not be worth the incredibly slow speed of this thing. At any rate, paying attention to your surroundings is pretty important here in the research hall, as there are a number of traps laid out for you. If you just walked forward, you would have gotten hit by those burst vials and lost most, if not all, of your HP. It does a truly ridiculous amount of damage. That doesn't mean you can't use them to your own advantage if you're clever enough, however. We can sneak past without triggering the pressure plate, and then gain the attention of this church doctor here, and then lead him back over like such. We can do a pretty nasty number on his HP. For reference there, that 873 damage would have been about the damage done to us if we tripped up one of the traps, and we have just shy of 1,000. So if you have sufficiently low vitality, these traps will totally kill you in one hit. So again, paying attention to them is quite important if you don't want to die.
Oh, Lady Maria, save me, please. I don't hear anything.
This Lady Maria must be someone important. I wonder if we'll get the chance to meet her at some point. Well, let's head back a bit and actually go through this door here, into the 3rd floor of the laboratory, and into a room that I guess has some researchers in it that we'll need to take out. Good thing they all seem to be sleeping, so we don't really have a group fight on our hands, just a series of 1v1s, and that makes them pretty easy to take out, even with the Logarius's wheel here. That is far and away the best and my favorite attack of the wheel, the transform dashing attack, which is ridiculous in the game and hits multiple times. As for the room itself, there are a few elevators here. We can't activate that one, but we can bring this one up. But before we head down there, we're actually going to head into this corner of the room and head down this easily missed ladder. Down here we can see another type of patient enemy, this one crawling around on all fours. Despite the fact that you would think that crawling around on all fours would reduce their mobility, they're actually far more mobile than their upright counterparts, and in fact far more dangerous because they can do this absolutely ridiculously leap upwards, and if they land on you they will do quite a bit of damage, so try and avoid having that happen. But if you can stunlock them, they're easy enough to take out. Just don't get aggroed by more than one, then things could get hairy. Fortunately, all of the type of patient enemies in this place have a pretty high chance to drop 1 or 2 blood vials, so even if you have to heal a bunch, you should be able to stock up on them. Here we pick up a variant of the old hunter's garb, the decorative old hunter's garb. Old hunter garb decorated with brass trinkets. At the time, some hunters believed that certain metals would ward off beasthood. On a night of the hunt, it is no wonder that people would resort to superstition. So it's basically just a slightly different looking old hunter set, which we'll check out at some point. Here we have one more of the leaping patients that we'll want to take out post-haste, just so he can't ambush us. So I mentioned before that the Logarius' wheel wouldn't be seeing too much use in this video here because it is +6 and we really need a +9 weapon for this area, and also because even if it were a +9, it's just too slow to be useful here. So I won't be showing it off in the flesh, I will be describing its moveset like usual, because it is a pretty nifty and fun trick weapon, and definitely something you should check out if you're playing through this game with a strength build. But first we have another one of these peaceable patients.
Blip, blop, blip, blop. Splish, splash, splish, splash.
Yeah, this is a popular spot for player messages. Unfortunately, I didn't find the one I expected to. A common message that you'll see here is nothing but common sense here. So finding it bereft, I decided to add one of my own. This is the first time in a long time that we've actually used the notebook. I did say way back that I would try to use it throughout the playthrough, but I kinda broke my promise there. I managed to break my habit of not using any consumables, but just it's hard to remember to use the note, especially when the benefit is fairly minor and oftentimes completely useless. A lot of times you end up getting the heal when it doesn't matter, when you're already topped off on HP. Leaving this message here should help with getting a few more heals, hopefully at opportune times in the future. Any additional aid is welcome here in the endgame, where enemies do absolutely ludicrous damage. Perhaps I could have chosen a better gesture, but that was the best one I thought of at the time. We'll see how many ratings that gets over the course of the rest of the LP. At any rate, heading back, this is the final stop on this path through the area, leading to a dead end that you want to be careful you don't just walk off of. If you're not paying attention, it is very easy to just continue along the stairs and end up dropping off at the end. Especially if the rats ambushing here are a bit more leisurely. Sometimes they don't drop until you're at the edge of the stairs, thus potentially knocking you off even if you do pay attention. So be careful. But yeah, this is ultimately a dead-end path, so we have to head back. Get used to that. This area has tons of crisscrossing pathways and dead ends, and alternate pathways and all that sort of thing. Definitely one of the more confusing levels to navigate in the game due to that and its overall vertical nature. Yeah, the elevator that we called earlier finally arrived, so let's descend and see where it leads. Oh, hello there.
Is that you, Lady Maria? No. You're someone else.
No, I'm not Lady Maria. Perhaps you could tell me of her.
Please, could you do something for me? I need brain fluid. Murky, mushy brain fluid.
Excuse me?
Please, could you do something for me? I need brain fluid. Murky, mushy brain fluid.
Alright, I'll look for this brain fluid for you. Maybe it's just an oddly named delicacy of some sort, like spotted dick. Well, aside from that NPC there, the other reason to come down this elevator is that it opens up something of a shortcut. It's not too useful at the moment, but it will become useful later on in the level when things change. But since we've fully explored that path, let's head up this stairway this time and see what lies for us here. What lies for us here is probably the toughest room in this entire level, and one of the toughest rooms in the game, because this room here is just filled to the brim with these patients. When they're by themselves or just in pairs or at worst trios, it's easy enough to take them out, as long as you maintain your distance and don't let yourself get stun-locked. But in this area here, there are a good 10 to 20 of these bastards, and that plus the fact that the room itself is fairly small and has a lot of objects for you to get caught on means you can die incredibly quickly, stun-locked against the table or wall by a bunch of these guys. The Shaman Bone Blade doesn't really come in too handy here because even if you manage to hit one with it, the others will most likely kill him immediately, and thus you won't really take out too many of these guys unless you manage to hit multiple of them with a single bone blade, which can be tricky. Even worse is the fact that the melee patients are supported by ones up above that throw vials filled with the same blue fluid that is used in the bookshelf traps, and they hurt quite a bit. So really, the best strategy for dealing with this room is to just run in, get the attention of a few, and then drag them out to deal with them by their lonesome, and then repeat as necessary until you've killed them all. I didn't comment on it at the time, but if you noticed when I first went into the room, I drank a lead elixir, expecting it to allow me to tank through their hits and thus take them out in groups with ease. Unfortunately, they're able to stun you even through the effect of the lead elixir, which means that their attacks just straight up ignore any hyper armor you have, which means that big weapons are even worse against these guys than you'd think. So yeah, that's why you don't really see me using the Logarius wheel so much. Speaking of though, let's actually get to talking about that weapon, since even if it isn't effective at all in this area, it is a pretty cool weapon and fun to use. So, untransformed, the weapon is just a straight up wheel that you bludgeon enemies with a series of swings. I think the most notable move of that moveset is the Charged R2, which is a horizontal swing that will send any enemy light enough flying, so it's pretty fun to use. Overall, the untransformed moveset isn't really that notable. It's the transform moveset where the Logarius' wheel truly shines, as by transforming it you unleash the rage of the Cainhurst soldiers slain with it. In its transform state, the attacks of the wheel are generally slower with the exception of the incredibly quick dashing attack, and tend to hit multiple times, so if you actually add a blood gem that procs on a single hit, it actually becomes more effective, so you can build up poison or rapid poison incredibly quickly with the attacks of the transform state of this weapon. In fact, it's so good that at one time you saw a lot of invaders have a gimmick of applying 3 rapid poison gems and then proccing it to one-shot other players. But getting back to what's happening on screen, here we have a new variety of enemy patient, this one considerably larger than the previous ones we faced, wielding some sort of metal pole. He's incredibly easy to stagger with gunshots, since most of his attack combos have multiple hits. But he has quite a bit of HP, so even with our high skill we need 2 visceral attacks, or 1 visceral attack then some regular attacks in order to take him out. And he does quite a bit of damage with his attacks, as you can see. So if you do try and stagger him, it is best done at a distance, where his attacks can't reach you. Thankfully here he was able to finish off, since he tried to climb down the ladder to get at us. He actually still nearly managed to kill us, because the last hit I tried just phased through him. He must have had iframes from finishing the ladder climbing animation, which was not something I expected at the time. But yeah, getting back to the Logarius' wheel, so the transform state of the weapon is pretty cool, but one even cooler feature of it is that in its transform state it has a special L2 move that no other weapon really has. When you press L2 when in the transform state, you'll actually charge the weapon with your own blood, causing a life-draining effect that builds up the more you charge it up. But the more you charge it up, the greater the damage of the weapon becomes, thus creating an interesting risk-reward scenario, especially since the damage done to you does count as orange health that can be restored with the rally system.
Kill me. Please, just kill me. Free me from this place before I go mad.
Someone help me. I'm guilty. I know. But I won't do it again. I promise. The dumb darkness. It frightens me. and what rises from its very depths.
Lady Maria, please take my hand. Please help me. Don't let me drown.
So here we have a number of docile patients, one of whom requested to be killed, so we'll oblige that. We will leave the other two alone though, since they did not explicitly request that. And it would be rather rude to just assume that that's what they want if they don't say so. I, for example, would be glad to have a weird enlarged head, if it meant that I could be alive when otherwise I would be dead. To each their own, after all. At any rate, exiting this room brings us to the hallway that we were previously in, which means that even though that one room with all the hostile patients is a tricky encounter, it's one you can avoid entirely just by heading down this way, and heading through this room, up to the room with the larger patient. So that's nice that they let you do that. They let you avoid one of the toughest encounters in the level. Heading back up, let's actually make some more progress here and head further up this research hall. Here we have one of my favorite set pieces in the entire level, just to watch. It's hard to see exactly, but there was a Gatling gun wielding, wheelchair bound huntsman up there who will shoot at anything that climbs up the steps, whether it be you or other patients in the facility. So if you're patient, you can just let them all wander up and get killed by him and thus not have to deal with them yourself, which is pretty neat. Remember how I've said several times that paying attention is important? That includes taking advantage of your guard camera and peeking around corners like so. If we just ran into the middle of the room unaware, we would have been ambushed by that one patient who would have done a grab attack that probably would have taken us out in one go. It does a ridiculous amount of damage, because again, it's something you can avoid if you're paying enough attention. And don't worry, there is another situation later where I can actually demo off getting grabbed, so something to look forward to in the future. Doesn't actually kill us, but it comes very close. So unfortunately in this case, the wheelchair-bound huntsman did not manage to take out these two patients here. So we're gonna have to either lead them into his hail of bullets or take them out ourselves. He doesn't have the best aim. But once we've dealt with the patients, we have to get past him, of course. He is on a hallway that we can't quite reach from this stairway just yet, so we have no choice but to run past him. He reloads pretty damn fast, but not quick enough that you can't run by him if you're going full tilt. And maybe with a bit of roll spam to abuse iframes, just in case. If you're not careful with your timing, it is very easy to get hit by his bullet spray and just get taken out by it, or get knocked off the stairway and fall unceremoniously to your death. But if you do make it past him, you can access this elevator here for another shortcut. This one here leads to the room in the 3rd floor research hall that we explored earlier, the one with all these researchers, who interestingly enough are wearing plague doctor masks. And these ones are proper plague doctor masks, as opposed to Eileen's, which is similar in appearance but ultimately different. So, having unlocked this handy shortcut, hello there. Don't think I didn't see you, gap in the middle of the elevator. That said, we won't be heading down that path just yet. It wouldn't be useful at the moment, but it will be useful in the future. This area is big enough, as you can very well see by the absurd length of this video, but I want to try and have it be as streamlined as possible, and not go to areas until there's something useful there that we can get. And yeah, here I demoed just how dangerous those traps are by getting hit by one. That was totally on purpose and intentional. It wasn't because I didn't notice the pressure plate at all, being too focused on the wheelchair-bound huntsman. Nope, not at all. Here we encounter another variant of the hostile patient enemies. These ones are kind of missing their heads. Though they are hostile in the sense that they are targetable, and thus an enemy that you can kill, they won't actually go after you. And since they're clearly having a pretty bad day already, we'll just leave them alone. Well then. Oh, hi. I think we know what happened to their heads then. Although these patient heads aren't terribly mobile, they can be pretty dangerous because they cause pretty high frenzy buildup with all of their attacks. Enough to cause a frenzy breakout due to a fairly low frenzy resist. Thankfully they're not that difficult to kill. And yeah, it turns out this one is a bit smarter than the others and just falls on you from the ceiling, dealing quite a bit of damage. If you don't mash buttons to escape, it could very well kill you if you have low enough vitality. So I'm kind of pissed at these guys for the trouble their heads have caused, so let's just get rid of them. I was also kind of hoping that they would drop some blood vials since we're getting a bit low, but no such luck it seems. So, getting back to discussing the Logarius' wheel, since we didn't fully cover it yet. We've talked about the weapon's movesets, but not the weapon overall. So the type of damage that the Logarius' wheel does in both modes is blunt physical and arcane. The fact that all of its physical damage is blunt means that if you have a gem that increases blunt damage, and it is more powerful than all of the general physical damage increasing blood gems you have, it would be better to use that. That it does blunt damage also means that it effectively does less damage to a lot of enemies, since blunt resistance is probably the most common physical resistance. As for the arcane element of the weapon, it's actually fairly interesting. By default, it's fairly low, but there are two ways you can increase it. One is by transforming the weapon. This shifts the priority of the attack rating a bit over to the arcane, although it doesn't show on the weapon stat page. The other way is by using the L2 move while it is transformed, as this boosts the arcane damage only. I think if you use it 3 times in a row, it maxes out at a 1.6 times bonus, or somewhere there's about. But yeah, it's overall a pretty cool weapon, and the way its transformation mechanic works is a bit distinct, which kind of helps make it stand out, even if ultimately it's not a terribly effective weapon. So here we are up at the tippy top of the research hall. On Perilous Rafters, a Soulsborne game would not be complete without having a section like this. One bit of advice here while you're fighting the rats and the crows: don't dodge ever, because if you dodge, you will almost certainly end up dodging off. So don't do that. I'm not really sure why I just stood and took that crow's barrage of attacks there. I must have gotten distracted by something. Here we have another docile patient.
Listen close, and you too will hear the sound of water.
Well, I don't quite hear anything, but maybe that's because the head isn't quite the right size, so let's fix that. For by wearing the enlarged head and listening carefully, we can hear the sticky sound. Drip drop as water seeping up from the depths, slowly, steadily. This item also acts as a reference to a similar item in the DLC of the first Dark Souls, where there were mutated townsfolk whose head you could acquire and wear. And that description admonished you for doing so on account of the head being disgusting and filled with mucus. I love some of the crazy things these games let you do at times. So the main reason to come up here to the tippy top is that up here you can rotate the giant curved staircase, and this will give us access to a few new areas of the research hall. But to access them we'll have to get down first.
Splish, splash. Splish, splash. Have you heard how curiously the sea churns? Like a storm, but like the rain, only gentle, like dripping water. It bellows from deep inside of me. Here it comes, up through my inside, but gently, like little droplets.
This enlarged head is docile, and so naturally we must kill it. For this is how we can acquire some brain fluid. Grayish amoeba-shaped brain fluid, wobbles and bounces, extracted from a patient whose head expanded until that was all that they were. In the early days of the healing church, the Great Ones were linked to the ocean, and so the cerebral patients would imbibe water and listen for the howl of the sea. Brain fluid vived inside the head, the initial makings of internal eyes. And she is just fine. By becoming an enlarged head filled with brain fluid, with eyes on the inside, or the precursors to that at least, she has obtained a semi-form of immortality. That does again bring up the question of whether such a fate is good or ill. Oh, and we get a Speedy Gonzales down there. We'll be seeing him, or his brethren at least, pretty soon. A new variant of the hostile patients, and probably the most dangerous. But yeah, the state that the patients ultimately enter in, where they become nothing but their head and achieve a state of semi-immortality, brings up the question of whether such a fate is good or ill. On the one hand, they're immortal, they won't ever die, and they can't be killed. On the other hand, they're stuck as a lump on the floor. My opinion, by the by, is that it is ultimately a good fate. Sure, you can't do much, but hey, you're never gonna die, and that's worth its weight in gold. So yeah, now that we've rotated this staircase, we can now access a bunch of areas that we couldn't before, as well as losing access to areas that we have explored before. We're not actually cut off from any of the previously explored areas, but we'll now have to get to some of them through different means. So, something I need to bring up here, when I record these videos and go through the levels, I try to do so in such a way as to minimize all potential backtracking, so as to give a most pleasant viewing experience. So far in this area I've been able to do just that, but this is the point of the level where things become a bit less clear in my mental map, and so at several points I will walk much slowlier than I usually do, and pan the camera around a bunch trying to orient myself. I have a perfect mental map of the area prior to rotating the staircase, but not afterwards, so there will be a bit more meandering than there usually is during this section of the video. So, one of the new segments of the level that we can now access is actually a lower portion of the staircase, on which there is a platform with another fully enlarged head. Unfortunately, this one is guarded by a rather aggressive hunter, wielding the threaded cane and a pistol. Much like the church hunter that we fought earlier, this one is made much easier by just drinking a lead elixir, and letting all of his attacks just bounce off of us ineffectually. You do have to take a bit more care with this one, however, because he is very spammy with his gun. So if you just spam attacks, you're basically inviting him to get a stagger and a visceral attack follow-up. And even through the damage reduction of the lead elixir, it will probably one-shot you. Otherwise, he's really easy to take out. He doesn't give much of a reward directly, but with him dead we can now safely access this enlarged head.
Plop. Plip. 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 Plop.
Plip plop, plip plop, plip plop, plip plop, plip plop, plip plop. And another brain fluid. That patient that we talked to earlier will surely be happy that we have so much brain fluid to give her. So remember before I mentioned there would be a fair bit of meandering during this part of the video? Here's one example of it. I couldn't remember if there weren't any new areas to access via this floor here, so I head back and check things out a bit, before finding out that no there aren't, and we just need to head down the elevator. Originally I had considered editing this part a bit more judiciously, to remove the backtracking and aimless wandering, but I feel this is good to include, just because this is likely how your first run of the area is going to go. When you don't have a good mental map of it, you are just going to be wandering around a bunch, because it's easy to mistake one floor for another due to how similar in appearance that they are. So, something I figured I'd point out is one of the more interesting revelations of this DLC is the fact that in the early days of the Healing Church, the Great Ones were associated specifically with the ocean. For the most part, this doesn't really come up in the main game. The Great Ones are associated either with the cosmos, as in the case of Ebrietas, or with the dream, as one of the umbilical cords states. The Carol Lake runes do link bodies of water with eldritch knowledge, but otherwise there's really not much association between the sea and the Great Ones. I just thought I'd mention that because it may or may not become relevant in the near future. Also, the reason we're not continuing up that staircase is that what lies beyond that large gate there is our ultimate destination, but we haven't yet explored all that we ought to. So, remember how I mentioned before that we'd be heading through this little stopgap in the elevator? Well, now we are. With the staircase having been rotated upward, we can now use it to access a few new bits of the level. Up ahead, we encounter a new enemy patient type, and one that's not too threatening, as they are fairly docile. They do a surprisingly large amount of damage though, so don't give them a chance to attack. But the main reason to come down here is this rather interesting item, the Lock Shield. The only shield in the game other than the crappy wooden shield we picked up so long ago. And as its description mentions, it blocks all forms of non-physical damage. So fire, arcane, and bolt, it reduces all of these damage types, and by a fairly hefty amount too, 70% if I recall correctly. So if you're having an especially large amount of trouble with an enemy that uses that type of damage, and not really using your gun or other offhand tool, it can be worth taking this thing out. After all, any amount of damage reduction is useful if you're gonna get hit. So, I mentioned before that although we evaded a patient's grab attempt, there would be another opportunity in the future to show that off. And that opportunity is right about now. Even with ridiculous button mashing, it takes out around 60% of HP and poisons us. Thankfully, it's not difficult to kill the enemy type once we're free. But it's worth coming over here, even if you do end up falling in the trap, because you get another key. This one to the underground cell doors that we were unable to open previously. We'll not be checking them out this video. I'm saving them along with a bunch of other stuff for an optional side content video. It'll probably be the one after the next video, assuming I don't do some chalice dungeons in the meantime. So at this point we've been to pretty much every area in the research hall here. Well, aside from one major one that will be in that side content video. So rather than getting down the long way, we're just gonna use a bold hunter's mark and save ourselves a bit of time. As well as causing Simon to spawn by the lantern here.
Oh, hello. Not a pretty sight, is it? The true face of the blood-worshipping, beast-purging, healing church. But that's not all. You seek the secrets held by the nightmare, do you not? Then here's what you must do. Climb the astral clock tower and kill Maria. She hides the real secret. Go on. Kill Maria atop the astral clock tower. She hides the real secret.
Well, alright then, I guess we'll kill this Lady Maria. And before we go, let's just get a good look at Simon here. He's got a rather haggard face with some messy facial hair and really knobbly fingers. Although that's not unusual for the characters in this game. But before we go up and find this Lady Maria, let's do a bit more exploration. So it turns out rotating the staircase caused a whole bunch of corpses and not so corpses to drop down below here. It's actually worth taking these guys out because they give a surprisingly large amount of blood echoes for how easy they are to take out. I wouldn't call it the best farming spot in the game by any means, but it is a decent one if you need some blood echoes. Just don't actually get hit by their attacks, otherwise you will be taken out in short order. Rather than using any more of 10 remaining blood vials, I instead see if retreating in here makes them back off or not. As it turns out, it does. Presumably this is to prevent any potential trouble with the NPCs in here.
Please, could you do something for me? I need brain fluid. Murky, mushy brain fluid.
Well, here you go.
Oh, thank you. You're terribly kind. Oh, it's wonderful. Oh, I hear the sticky sound. Do you hear it too? Oh, I know. Will you have my blood as thanks? I'll have you know, I was once a blood saint too, so do come back if you ever run dry of saint's blood.
So we can't actually accept her blood because we currently have the blood of another blood saint, Adela. So let's use that blood vial.
Oh, hello again. Will you accept my blood as thanks?
Yes, ma'am.
That makes me happy. But I cannot move. Look, on my right arm. I'm sorry to trouble you. But you don't mind, do you?
In addition to receiving her blood, we now know her name, Adeline. Her blood has the same effect as Adela's. Adeline was originally one of the blood saints who received treatment by the church to cultivate worthy blood. Adeline's was one of the few cases that turned out favorably.
Oh, there you are. Don't be greedy. As they say, fear the thirst for blood. I should know. I was once a blood saint too.
So, at this point, in order to progress her questline, you need to refresh the area several times.
Hello? Hello? Is anyone there? Please, somebody, I need help. I'm trying, but I'm afraid the sound is fading. Hello? Is that who I think it is? Please. Oh, please, I need brain fluid. The sticky sound is fading fast. Please bring me brain fluid. I must have it. That sound, it is all that guides me. Without it, I'll be sent back to my former, lesser years. Yes, that's it. Let me have it. I can hear it. Yes. The sound that guides me. Thank you. Thank you so much. You have saved me. Take this charm. Lady Maria gave it to me, but it is all I can offer, other than my own blood. Please, do not abandon me. I promise to do good.
All the patients here seem to worship this Lady Maria character, but Simon thinks that she needs to be taken out in order to discover the true secret in the Hunter's Nightmare here. Of course, we'll need to ascend further up the research hall here, and head up into the clock tower in order for that to even be an option first. Yeah, there's a fun little thing you can do with Ludwig's Holy Blade, is the charged R2 backstab followed by the charged R2 follow-up, which can potentially do more damage than the visceral attack, depending on how high or low your skill is.
I have failed. Please, Lady Maria.
Well, I'm afraid there's nothing we can do about that,
I have failed. Please.
other than heading onward beyond these gates to find this Lady Maria, and have a stern chat with her. But first, a bit of preparation. For the coming fight, if you can use it, you absolutely want the Augur of Ebrietas equipped. It comes in very handy in this fight. So, before we can meet Lady Maria, we must first fight our way past these living failures. One thing you may notice immediately about their appearance is that they are oddly similar to the Celestial Emissaries. The research that culminated in the creation of the Celestial Emissaries produced a number of failures first, these being one of them. However, despite them being failures, they're honestly more dangerous than the real thing. Much like the Celestial Emissary fight, they will continually spawn, in this case up to a maximum of 5. Unlike that fight, there is no main one, and damaging any of them damages the primary health bar. Although they spawn continually until they reach their max, they do so with a delay, so if you're quick enough at taking them out, you can actually prevent them from reaching that max. And this is advised to try and attempt because they support each other pretty well. They come in 2 varieties, a melee one which will spam melee attacks in front of you and deal quite a bit of damage as well as knocking you to the ground should you be hit, as well as a mage type that stays off at a distance and uses one of 2 types of projectile magic to attack you. Thankfully, you can mitigate the dangerousness of the mage type by using the tree in the center. It will block all of their magic, so simply keep that one between you and the mages, and you'll be fairly fine. That said, it's not quite that simple, because the mage and melee types are not discrete. Each individual one can switch between the two at will, depending on how close they are to you. If you stay close to one for a while, it will switch to melee mode, and if you back off from one and leave it at a distance, it will switch to mage mode. As a result, this is a fight where you need to constantly stay on your toes and either pan your camera around or rely on audio cues from the living failures to always keep tabs on their position. If you notice, I only just barely managed to dodge their magic projectiles in a number of cases, and this is due to hearing the audio cues from the projectiles. But again, the best way to deal with them and to keep things from being too hectic is to take them out faster than they can manage to respawn, and the best way to do this is with visceral attacks. When they are performing melee attacks, they are easily staggered with the gun, and when they are in mage mode, they are easily circled around and backstabbed with the Augur of Ebrietas. If you don't have the Augur, you could also use the charge attack of a quicker weapon, such as the Saw Spear. Otherwise, I would recommend charge attacks from as far range as possible, since they will only try and attack you with melee attacks when they are right up in your face. So if you distance yourself, you can damage them and then back off without them being able to do anything. So yeah, in summation, this fight basically is about managing a bunch of targets at once, and not really losing your cool. You'll notice that I started to do worse once they ganged up on me, so keeping the numbers low is the ideal way to deal with this fight. So that's all I have to say about the living failures. They're not too difficult to fight so long as you can keep a calm and cool head. Their attack patterns are fairly simple and they don't really have too many tricks up their collective sleeves. Oh right, one thing I forgot to mention, they can group cast fucking Meteo. This is an attack best avoided. Thankfully it is pretty easy to do so as you have two options. One is to backstab and then visceral attack one of the living failures and rely on iframes. The other is to use the tree as cover, which is especially easy since the meteors always only come from one direction. So just stand on the opposite side of the tree and you'll be just fine. But despite the fact that things were going pretty well, ultimately I end up making one too many mistakes and get taken out. I'm gonna blame that on the volume of my television being too loud and the music being too bombastic and distracting. So let's try a second attempt. Don't worry, I don't show the entire thing, just the beginning and then the end portion. That is another thing I should mention about this fight, is that it is a very long one, due to how much HP they have as a collective. But yeah, I'll just leave you to watch this go around. Things go a fair bit better this time. And at last, the living failures live up to the name and fail. For killing them, we acquire the Astral Clock Tower key, which we can use to proceed. But that's enough for now. Next time we'll proceed onward into the clock tower and meet this much-mentioned Lady Maria. Goodbye, my fellow hunters. I look forward to seeing you next time as we cover probably some of the coolest content in the entire Soulsborne series.